Chairman.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Thursday, the 6th of February 2025. My name is Councillor Simon Morgan and I'm the Chairperson of the committee. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put up your hand to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Could I ask members to avoid approaching the top table, as this could create interference with the cameras and the live stream. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. We do not have any fire alarm testing scheduled for today, so if you hear the alarm, please exit using either of the two marked fire escape routes. Once out of the building, please proceed to the designated muster point located on the grass verge by the police station entrance. So, agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Can I have the apologies for absence, please, Tara?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies been received from Councillor Shaughnessy and Councillor Stevens, and Councillor Fittock is attending as a substitute for Councillor Shaughnessy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, and welcome to Councillor Fittock. Very good to see you here. Thank you very much. Right, item 3, minutes of the last meeting. It is recommended that the minutes of the meetings held on the 15th of October 2024, found on pages 5 to 6, are approved as a true and accurate record. So I move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stewart, thank you. And is that agreed by acclamation?
Yes.
Yep. As I said, yes?
Agreed.
Good. Next item, declarations of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests other than other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise through the meetings. Anyone, any declarations of interest? Thank you. Item 5, public participation. Tara, is there any public participation this evening?
No, Chairman, we've not received any.
Thank you very much. In which case, let's move on to agenda item 6, which can be found on page 7. This is regarding the planning appeal at Woodham. Before we sort of go into this, I wish to clarify the purpose of the report that has been made, and which hopefully you've all had the opportunity to study, and the extent of this committee's involvement in the matter. Now, in line with the agreed process, the committee's working group has taken an initial look at a request for a scrutiny item which was raised by myself. The report sets out the working group's consideration of the matters I raised in my request and its conclusions, with a recommendation that the committee now decides the outcome of my request. My request for this matter to become an item for scrutiny was based on an awareness of the public disquiet over the Council's conduct and involvement in the planning appeal and its actions in dealing with a particular issue arising from the appeal decision, namely the enforcement of a condition imposed on the resulting planning permission. To that extent, the requested scrutiny is backward-looking in terms of reviewing what took place. Additionally, the working group was made aware of the previous and continuing concerns of the public over possible public nuisance arising from the use of the site and sought further information and advice on this, which is an environmental health rather than a planning issue, and the report does deal with this. The working group was also made aware of ongoing and live development management issues, including associated exchanges of representation between the local residents and the council, and these matters continue to be live. I must emphasise that these live matters are totally beyond the scope of what was before the working group and therefore before the committee now. We cannot discuss the live planning matters, and any members of the public or councillors should be aware that the appropriate way to engage with these is through the ongoing planning case. And so it is for the committee now to confine its consideration to the matters the subject of the scrutiny request and on which the working group has reported. I should also add that we have recently, today, or yesterday in fact, received an email from Mr. Russell Ford of Smart Planning, who I think is actually in the chamber, who is acting for a number of the concerned residents. If we decide to add this item to the scrutiny work plan, then the officers will be able to respond to those points he's made directly. That, therefore, in terms of the report, as I say, hopefully you've had a chance to see it. Some of you I know weren't on the working group. Mr. Jennings, do you want to make some a sort of a summary in terms of what is here?
Chairman, I think you've summarised the purport of the what's before the committee here very well, and it's the status of the report which is the all-important thing. It is an initial assessment of the scrutiny request that was submitted. It's a matter for the committee now to decide how it feels about the report back on by way of an initial assessment to take it forward or otherwise. It has been back to your committee once before in September, as noted in the report, but it went back for further information and understanding around potential nuisance to which you've referred to. Other than that, paragraph 3.7 does at least note the working group's awareness of the ongoing live development issues, which are, of course, matters for determination elsewhere by the local planning authority. So it really is now for the committee to decide on this scrutiny request.
Thank you, Mr. Right, can I, members, have we any questions, queries, or comments they wish to make? Yes, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. On 3.5.2.2, it indicates that the inspector was clear as to read refuse, but it indicated that there was no, 3.5.2.1, no statement of common ground submitted on time. Now, did that get submitted and get, if you like, considered by the inspector, or did he just look at the draft, as it were, that may or may not have been totally accurate?
Mr. Johnson, did you hear that? Mr. Johnson?
Myself? Yes, thank you, Chair. I did hear that. Thank you, Councillor Fittock. As stated elsewhere in papers, may not necessarily this one, but the council failed to, or officers failed to submit or respond rather to the statement of common ground within the appropriate time. After that period, one is time barred to submit it, so one was not submitted.
Thank you. Yes.
May I come back to you? I mean, I can understand part of the issue here, but I do find it somewhat disappointing that as a council, in the absence of anybody being able to do so, we just ignored the fact that we had to do it in the first place. I mean, even some kind of best effort would have been better than nothing, wouldn't it? I'm sure. Thank you, Chair.
Well, yes, which is sort of part of the reason why I've obviously had this matter referred. Anyone else that wishes to say anything? Right, well, if we could go, there is a recommendation on page 7 that the committee determines this scrutiny request in the light of the working group's conclusions following the further considerations of the issues raised as set out in this report. And I would like to propose that this matter be put forward to be put onto the scrutiny work plan for the committee going forward. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Spenceley. Is that agreed by assent? Agreed, yeah. Is there anything you need further from us,
Yeah, it would be helpful just if the committee could define the further detail they would like to look into as part of the work plan item.
Well, I think we've got one already to put forward in terms of obviously what I think what we're looking at is a sort of chronology as to exactly what went wrong and why. I think that's and there also we have Mr. Ford's queries on questions already submitted, which I think need to be addressed. So, Councillor Spencer.
I think also to look at what we do in a situation like this rather than miss the required date. So actually going forward, coming up with suggestions as to what could be done in the future to avoid such a circumstance. So I think that's a very specific thing, and that's really what we should, I think, be doing in our role in this committee, is coming up with a way to avoid it in future. Yeah.
Also, something I've raised earlier is is there a specific policy regarding how officers treat an appeal that has been raised against a member's overturn of an officer's decision? I mean, don't answer that question now, but I think that could be, that would be a pertinent aspect to discuss in the report going forward. Is that sufficient for you to?
Okay, yep, thank you.
Good. All right, thank you, members. In that case, let us go on to agenda item 7, which I think is on page 15. Which is the corporate project land at Heybridge. Again, I hope that you've all had the opportunity to read the report, and also there are certain other information which should have been available on Mod UK, which also sort of adds as a bit of a background. Stuart, could you give us perhaps again a sort of brief overview of where we think we are at this stage?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is the report of the working group on its conclusions, having looked at the various issues over several months, in fact. The difference between this and the previous agenda item, of course, is this is a scrutiny work plan item, so therefore the working group has been seeking and has received a great deal of detailed information. There have been reports back to your committee in April and September last year, and in September more clarity around the basis for and how the project began, and engagement with local landowners was sought. The outcome of the third review by the working group is set out in some detail in paragraph 3.8, plus some additional findings. The working group also received a detailed schedule of financial milestones associated with the project to better understand how it unfolded. And in section 4, the conclusion of the working group is that it has discussed enough, received enough information to understand and be clear on a wide range of issues, and commends again the lessons learned report for the future. This is commending it to the council for future use, and it also, the working group also wishes to emphasise that there is an obligation on the part of both members and officers to be clear on the objectives of similar projects at the outset. So the recommendation is for the committee to note the considerable work of the working group on this, and an invitation to endorse the working group's conclusions, including the lessons learned report undertaken by the project team. And I think one of the best ways, if the committee is so minded, to develop and spread these important messages is by way of a recommendation to council. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jennings. Right, members, has anyone any input they wish to make? Councillor Fittock.
I'm just going through the report, Chair, thank you. It seems to me that one of the lessons learned would probably be that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But I mean, moving on, I mean, it starts off from the assumption that the housing officer, can go off at a tangent and major project. But to me, there is a step before that. I mean, if we've got £250,000 sitting there in S106 money, and it's there to provide affordable housing, the starting point should really be to determine what type of strategy we want to adopt to use it in the first place. It seems to me that we jumped straight into, well, the best way to spend it is to have a development. And there might have been other options available that would have been more expedient and or more appropriate. So I'd like to think that in the bigger picture, I don't know the history of when it came to members and through the council, but you're sort of starting from the assumption you're going to do something before you've decided what you should be doing in the first place, is what it strikes me. So I would imagine one of the lessons learned is that the money does not belong to any individual, it belongs to the residents, and it's supposed to be there to mitigate the impact of development on the residents. It's not a project fund to embark upon because it's seemingly a good deed. That's what I want to say on that. I think we started too far into the process.
Yes. In terms of I think you're talking particularly about the utilisation of commuted sums, in particular as to whether that's the thing. Yeah. Mr. Butcher, do you want to come give us some?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the commuted sums, the commuted sums come in different pots of money, and we didn't have an accumulative total of over 250,000. They're also time limited, so we were looking at various different pots of commuted sums that were time limited and needed to be spent within a reasonable timescale. Otherwise, there's the opportunity for the developers to claw back that money rather than us invest it. I think the most pressing one was to the value of about £80,000, and we needed to ensure that we could identify an opportunity. Now, and when it comes to identifying opportunities, I think it's the role of officers to bring opportunities and ideas to members that use that give the biggest bang for our buck, if I guess, and the greatest opportunity that we could identify was that working to acquire land to deliver affordable housing. I think at the very beginning of the project, and I know this is something we've gone over with the working group, it was discussed with the utilisation of the commuted sums. It was discussed at length with both the corporate leadership team and the corporate projects working group at that time, before a steer from the working group was provided to then take that to committee, to Strategy and Resources Committee to approve the budget. So no money was actually committed or spent until such time that we've been to Strategy and Resources and got that approval from members. Even though it was discussed prior to that with the corporate leadership team and the corporate projects working group. So I hope that provides a bit more detail.
Thank you. Come back on that? It does. I mean, all I'm saying is that, I mean, it seems to me we had a binary choice was offered to members about how we could utilise these funds, and perhaps a broader conversation on the total sum that's available might have yielded a different result. So I'm just saying that we probably narrowed our options very early on in the trajectory of spending the money. But I understand what you're saying, Mr. Butch. Thank you.
Is there any particular addition to the report that you would recommend we put in then, Councillor Philip?
I mean, I think it starts from the lessons learned. I mean, I think, I don't know whether this is encompassed part of it, but we now have a project management team or a process, and I think all of these things need to go through these processes before they end up presented to members when it's already been decided to some degree by officers. That's a choice that they're going to make on the matter. I think when we've got these commuted sums, there should be a wider discussion on the totality of it, and options that come forward shouldn't be binary, they should be more breadth. So going through the sort of project management process, I think the first point to me is making sure that there's wide enough consideration across a range of different ways of spending money, not just one. And I don't know how our processes deal with that, because that could be the problem. It seems we started off in a direction that we then couldn't change. And it might not have been where we would, if we had a wider discussion, where we could have gone.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Spencer.
So I think, you know, we have seen a lot in the lessons learned report and from our discussions in the working group on this. I thought that Councillor Fittock raised a really interesting point when he emailed us prior to this meeting, Chair, with regard to the using commuted sums for what essentially in this project was at the outset commercial gain. And I suppose that is something to take away from this and look at what we do going forward. I mean, I was a new member and started on corporate projects, and I'm going to be very careful now not to say anything which remains confidential. But what I will say is that it was all quite bewildering as a new member, because there was such a lot of talk about how much money would be made, and then the mention of the flood alleviation scheme. Well, and I recall a meeting, and I'm sure you do as well, Mr. Butcher, where other councillors were saying, oh, we should be spending the money here and we should be spending the money there instead. And it was all very random. There was just no plan. And I think, I'm sure those lessons have been learned, but I think it does pin down the importance of any opportunity coming forward, whether that's for commercial gain or whether it's to satisfy another need that we have for our residents. I just think that lesson is the one that maybe needs to be taken from that, is that we need to be very clear. We do need to look at all the options and not just sort of think we've got this opportunity, so there's a lot of danger in that, great though it may be, in just pouring everything forth into that without necessarily considering exactly what we're doing. For me, that's the biggest. You know, everyone talks, don't they, about councils being too process heavy, and then there comes a day when you realise why those processes are absolutely necessary. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Mr. Butcher, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to come back on a couple of points. I mean, I just want to be clear that through the project management process, a business case was presented to members, and it did have various options available for members to consider. I accept that they may not have been as far-reaching as perhaps members would have liked, but there were options for consideration as to how we utilise those funds. And just to provide further assurance around the process, the project was one that was audited by our external auditors as well. So the process from start to, at the time, it was a project that was in flight. So, yeah, just to provide that additional assurance that it wasn't just officers reviewing that process. We also had the external auditors come and look at that process as well throughout the project.
Oh, Councillor Fittock.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what Mr. Butcher's saying, but it would seem to me, reading through the report, that we go in to mention the loss of the 5-year housing land supply. Well, these are all other factors that have got nothing really to do with why we were doing it in the first place. So I think we have to be careful moving forward that we don't use additional reasons just to push the members on a little bit and say, well, this will help us all. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. So I think it looks to me that it become a wider reasons for the original project, bringing in affordable housing, bringing the 5-year housing land supply, bringing in the flood alleviation scheme. These are soft benefits that can influence members, and I think you just have to be careful that we really stick and focus to the reason why we're doing something, and albeit these do add value to some degree. I think it's a bit dangerous. I mean, I'd like for you to allow us to Butcher. I mean, from his perspective, we talk a lot about the officers here, but what would you like to see more from members?
Interesting question, Councillor Fittock. I think as an officer, we felt that we were providing members with a lot of information, but I don't think we were. It didn't feel like a collaborative project in some aspects. It felt like it was being driven by officers, and I think there was the dual purpose to deliver the commercial income and affordable units. And I totally appreciate what you're saying. I think there were other softer benefits that were outside of the scope of the project, but were almost brought in to help the project along, if you like. So I think a lesson learned from officers is to bring members along on the way. And I think another lesson learned was when we had the sort of 50% turnover of members, and that was quite difficult, and that was quite a challenge to bring the new members on the journey, where we'd already had, we'd already done a lot of that early engagement with members at the very beginning. And then we lost some members. We had a few that continued. So we had to kind of, and I don't think officers work collaboratively enough with members at that point when the new members came in to really bring them on the journey of how the project has got to where it was so far.
Anybody else? Okay, members, we have a recommendation. The committee is recommended to note the work undertaken by the working group to understand and clarify the various issues and points of concern raised, and by way of an outcome endorse the working group's conclusions together with the findings contained in the lessons learned report produced by the project team, with a view to them influencing practice and process in relation to future corporate projects. And I think we ought to add to that this report should be put forward to, I would think, full council. So that is the recommendation as amended with my amendment. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Spenceley, is that agreed by assent? Great, thank you. Right, thank you, members. Right, so moving on to agenda item 8, which I think can be found on page 25, which is the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Opportunity to pat ourselves on the back, hopefully. So, Mr. Jennings, is there anything you want to sort of say? I mean, obviously, is there anything?
Yes, Chair, it is largely factual. I mean, this is an annual event because of the requirement within the committee's terms of reference to report to council annually. So this is what we do, and obviously if this is the first look at the preparation of that annual report, and that will be updated as a result of your actions and decisions tonight and anything else. But this is a start, and obviously if there's another opportunity before your committee to look at the updated version, that will be taken. Otherwise, an updated version of this will go to statutory annual council.
Thank you. Anything they wish to add or contribute? Yes, Mr. Councillor Fiddick.
I'd just like to say, I mean, I'm obviously not a member of this committee, but I do follow it from afar. And I think the committee's done a really good job over the calendar year and adding some really good value, and obviously worked very diligently to come up with good conclusions and investigations. So I commend you all for doing so well.
Councillor Fiddick, you can come back any time. Okay, members, so we have a recommendation to the council that the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for 2024-2025 is accepted. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Members, is that agreed by assent? Agreed. Okay. Right, moving on to agenda item 9. Any other items of business that the chairperson decides are urgent? Well, they're not exactly urgent, but I have been asked to share with members a partner update, possible or possible partners that we would want to invite, partner organisations in to present to the committee. And the working group suggested it may be helpful to hear from Anglian Water and Essex Highways. We've also ongoing requests for the health partners and our crime and disorder panel. Obviously that's ongoing, but these will be in addition to that. So I just want to announce to members that the officers are looking into this at the moment and will update the committee in due course. Anything you want to add to that, Cheryl, at all? No. Okay, in which case, nothing further to add. I therefore declare the meeting closed as at 19:59. Members, thank you very much indeed.